We stand on the brink of a technological revolution that will fundamentally change the way we live, work, and relate with each other. This is what Klaus Schwab said in the run-up to Davos 2016, whereas you know the main theme is the fourth industrial revolution. And we have some great speakers here who can speak to those very issues that have defined the agenda for this year's Davos. Okay. I'm going to go through and I'm going to introduce the speakers first. First of all, ladies first, and to my right, I'm delighted to have Hannah Asser here, who is the founder of Wonderloop, with a very new and innovative video introduction business, which Hannah is going to talk a little bit more about. This is a business that Hannah initially self-funded, then moved on to raise outside capital. And I know that, and probably many of you have read, that she's used some pretty digital and innovative ways to raise that capital. We have Yegor Yakovlev, who is the founder of Twiggle, which is the #1 online video business in Russia. Very, very crudely put, this is a business that's something like a Hulu or a Netflix. But what's interesting about it is that when Yegor created it, it was at a time when Hulu was still, and Netflix was still sending DVDs in the post. So he's a real pioneer in his space. We have Michael Choynaki, who is the head of Closier. He's founder and CEO. This is a business that, an online platform that's looking to address a shortcoming in the way that companies find investors and investors find companies, particularly between emerging and developed markets. And finally, I have, and last but not least, Brian Pallas, who's the head of Opportunity Network, which again, I should say, actually, Brian started his career as a comedy writer in Italy, but then moved on, and when he was doing an MBA in the US, had the idea to bring together projects and investors, and felt that there was a way that that could be done online. So we couldn't have more topical, more relevant issues and more relevant background for our discussion today. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start by asking some of our speakers some specific one-on-one questions, and then what we will do after that is we will go into more of a group discussion and touch on that core issue that I mentioned at the beginning of the discussion. So Hannah, if you don't mind, maybe I'd like to start with you and tell me, when you had the idea to create your business, what was the gap? What didn't exist? What were you trying to achieve?
I grew up in a small town in Norway, and what I felt was lacking was something that solved the stranger space, which is when we yet have to connect it with another person. And I think it was, living in this small town, being this entrepreneurial spirit, but feeling very stuck and wanting to connect with like-minded people. And that's when I thought, how can I solve this with technology? And watching way too much Oprah, being my teacher from very young age. And I think it is the fact that there is yet any good ways of connecting with someone virtually that we don't know, except for the dating industry, basically. So I thought about, okay, how do we make a stranger go from being a stranger to not stranger? And my conclusion with that was that if we can see who people are without meeting them, without being dependent on being geographically with them, we can change the stranger space and how we connect and basically view the entire world. So I founded something called Video Profiles, which is actually a couple of years ago, being early, when no one really understood the concept of video profiles. It's like, what is it? Why would I do a video profile of myself? And what would I use it for? So it's first the last half year, people are like, video identity of people. This might be the next generation online identity, which is what I thought of since I was 15. So it's exciting times to see that now video profiles is getting some attention.
Mm-hmm. Listen, if I remember correctly, the last time I saw you was last summer, as I was leaving at about 4 a.m. a party by Mikhail Prokhorov in St. Petersburg. And I saw you with your phone doing some videoing, and I said, Hannah, what are you doing? And you said, I'm Snapchatting here to send to an investor. And then the next thing I know, I read about the first ever investment that was raised via Snapchat, courtesy of Hannah. Was that the video? And does that set a precedent for how companies think about this type of topic?
Well, yeah, I'm all into Snapchat. Having worked in consumer technology for so many years, I'm obsessed with the new social technology out there, and Snapchat is my latest addiction. So when I did that, I got someone messaged me because I snapped from the World Economic Forum in Russia and some other events I was doing, and this investor snapped me and said, "Hey, why are you at all these great things? And like, what are you working on? You're working a lot." And like, because I work, obviously I work a lot, and I snapped that I work a lot. And then I snapped back what I was working on, and he's like, "Well, are you looking for investors?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then we did an entire investment deal on Snapchat. Which and it wasn't a big amount or anything, but it was like it was so interesting to see that you can use different types of methods to raise capital, and it's a way of visualizing your work, right? Which is hard, because getting out there and telling the world, this is my startup, this is my company, this is what I do, it's one of the hardest things you can do, no matter what you do. So social media is definitely one way of a new way of getting out there, and also in terms of capital.
Something tells me that you're going to see all of us Snapchatting immediately after this session comes to an end. But last question for now, before I move on. Listen, I think this is an issue that's close to your heart. I think it's reasonable to say that as a woman, CEO of a business in this field, and quite frankly in any field, you're definitely in the minority. Has that been an issue? Did that create obstacles? And on the more positive side, do you believe that your success is something that potentially opens up other opportunities?
Yeah, so I think the work I've had to put in is probably like 10x what is the normal amount of energy one usually puts in to get to the same place. And I think I live this issue every day. On all the questions I get that I don't think male entrepreneurs get, like the common thing I get is, "What do you do for fun?" Which is like, I don't. I don't, like, I work, I want to change this world, I want to create a product. I'm not really like into fun, like, what are you talking about? So I go through this every day, and I've been successful raising angel money, but we're now raising seed, and that's harder. When it comes to the bigger millions, you see that most investors are men, and their references are doing deals with men, and they are used to men being the one making the money, right? And I asked one of my investors, or angel investors recently, I said, "How many women has made you money?" And he thought about it, and he's like, 0. So, and to change that, we need the investors investing more in money, seeing it, because they will see it more as a risk, because the history isn't there of women entrepreneurs making billion-dollar companies. So it's a chicken and egg, because for me to build that billion-dollar company, I need that seed money, that couple of million, right, to do it. So we need changing this, and I hope to be able to lead some sort of way, and take the pain, because I can deal with pain. Kind of what makes me an entrepreneur. You have to be able to do that, and hopefully the path will be easier for the next generation ahead.
We hope so, and it certainly seems to be going that way. Let me turn over to Brian here. And now, Brian, I think it's probably reasonable to say that with your business, this is a kind of a case of bringing new technology to traditional industries. But I think that one of the challenges when you do that is that you have the incumbent players in the traditional industries that aren't necessarily going to be supportive of this process. So how do you overcome the reservation that you no doubt experience from the banks that have traditionally played the role of facilitating the investments? How do you get them on side, or how do you displace? How does that work?
Sure. So the way I generally look at what we do is that we are living in an ecosystem, and we look at us as a company that works through symbiosis. So we work with the final customer, which are the clients of the banks, and we work with banks. So our service is very simple. We work to create a platform where all the best customers of banks worldwide can share and connect to business opportunities. Could be investment opportunities, but also joint venture or supply distribution agreements, anything that is strategic and worth at least $1 million. So the idea there is I'm getting a lot from banks, because banks are giving us the credibility to go to these clients of theirs and say, hey, this is something that can add value, where you will find all my other best customers and the best customers of other banks worldwide. And also, I'm leveraging the sales force to do it. I'm leveraging the money because I get paid by them to do it. And at the end of the day, I also leverage a lot what is their screening process, because they have screened each one of these individuals, and that's why the trust is there in our platform. But in order to do that, in order to work with them, I have to give back more than what I take. So the idea of our company, and in general of all the companies that work in the field of digital symbiosis, which is opposed to digital disruption, is rather than take the incumbents out, we collaborate with the incumbents to improve their business model, add value for their clients, for them, and for us at the same time. So what we give back to the banks is a way to engage with a customer on something that is not directly related to lending money or getting money back, which is usually a conflictual relationship where one side wants to get more and the other side wants to give less in terms of rates and terms and conditions. But it is a collaborative conversation where they can grow the respective businesses in a collaborative way. And on top of that, whenever a customer joins through a bank, we link it to the bank once and for all. So we give exclusivity on that customer to that specific bank on all the activity that the customer is doing into our platform. So that translates in massive amount of deal flow going back to the bank that believed in us first and gain market share in the form of share of wallet. So the point is, you can build a relationship only if it is a two-way relationship where you're adding as much value as the one you're taking, if not more. And so to summarize, the bank is getting market share, the company is getting access to worldwide business opportunities, and we are getting very good margins, but comparatively a very small share of the overall value we create. It is still tens of millions of dollars per year in terms of a small share, but what we create for these banks and for these companies in aggregate is billions. So to me, the point is not create a company that will be big on its own, is more like being that element in the value chain that adds value to everybody without disrupting anything.
You've spoken a lot about the challenges of international expansion for businesses such as yours, these types of online businesses. What, in your experience, I know that you've now already really rolled this out into a number of different markets around the world, and you have offices in these places. What have been the key lessons learned or takeaways from that process of international expansion?
Sure. So international expansion is not as easy as it may look like, and we are now operating in 78 countries. So we've seen a little bit of that challenge into the phases of our growth. So I have two main suggestions for anybody that is looking at international expansion. And number one is, rather than decide which country you want to go by the means of your contacts. So, oh, I know a guy in Russia, let's go to Russia, or I know a guy in Germany, let's go to Germany. Figure out what is the best country for you, and then either you use a service like us or you use any other mean or way to go specifically to that country, because many times it's not based on strategic decision, it's more based on the chance of who you know and what are your contacts, which not necessarily will bring to the best outcome. The other suggestion is, if you enter a country, especially if you're there to sell in that country, you need to have local people. We have learned that, and now for each country where we work, in order to convince banks to work with us, onboard them, and so on, we have local people that are senior, respected in the industry, so in the banking field in this case, 20, 25 years of experience, that's our field, but in general the idea, get local people that understand culture, tradition, and can operate in those countries easily.
Give us an idea, just to give us and for the viewers, a bit of an illustration of your business. I mean, name us a case where a project has come together with money that you think wouldn't have happened without the innovation that you've brought to this. I mean, can you give us a picture here?
Of course, I'll give you two examples. One that is kind of bread and butter of what we do. Another one that is something that happened very recently, and is something that we ourselves would never have expected because it's very niche. So, typical example, we have a US company decided to integrate vertically. They were selling wine. So they went back to Italy, where we have a large partner that onboarded thousands of Italian companies. Said, we want to buy a wine production facility. And they found a place that was producing 150,000 bottles per year, fully automated, 4 or 5 people working there. They scooped it up, bought it, and that would have happened without somebody to introduce them one another. So that's example number one, which is kind of the bread and butter of what we do every day. And today we represent something close to $45 billion of active business opportunities with an average deal of 40 million. So it's 1,100 business proposition from real CEOs around the globe certified by banks. The case that is a little bit more niche is a company that was producing, this is even hard for me to translate, they are producing amphibious vehicles, and they were looking for somebody to prototype a very specific type of gear for those amphibious vehicles. We looked at that opportunity and we said, okay, how are we going to match that? But having thousands and thousands of CEOs worldwide, within weeks we were able to find a counterpart that was interested to deal with these guys. Now they're prototyping together. And fun enough, they were 100 miles away, but they didn't realize they existed. So a couple of real examples.
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm going to come over to Yegor here. And actually, just before I ask Yegor a couple of questions, I do want to remind everyone that's online and watching this, if you have questions for the panel, we will take a number of your questions towards the end of the discussion, so do feed them through our websites. Yegor, you created Twiggle, as again, to remind this is an online video platform in Russia. You created it at a time when the Netflix of this world were still sending out DVDs by post. I can remember ordering them and waiting 5 days for the film to arrive.
It's been 2007 actually, something like that, long time ago.
How did you have the idea? What inspired you to do what you did back then?
So actually, I've been working at that time in a company who is producing TV series, and actually I've been shooting behind the scene video and put it online, and found that a lot of people such interested in these videos that starting to watch in a volume that I decided that it's market ready to start this direction, you know, to provide video via internet. And it's been first step, and you know, for me it's been even challenging in a way that I've been the first one, or probably one of the first one, who is starting to license this content from international providers on the market in Europe. I came to people and say, I want to buy rights for internet. They say, we've never sold rights for internet. How much it cost? I said, 50 euros. Why 50 euros? I don't know, 50 euros for video. They say, no, it has to be 70. No, I say 50. It's been beginning of the story, you know.
Listen, when you did this, was this, you know, we're going to come on to, during this discussion, this sort of notion of disruption versus symbiosis. Would you describe this as having been a disruptive event for the video industry at the time, be it in Russia or around the world?
Yeah, actually, to some extent, Russia, from online video point of view, very unique country. That's the third biggest country in the world from number of videos people consuming after China and US. It's about 60 million people on a monthly basis, according to Comscore, watching video online, and consuming about 20 billion streams a month, which is kind of big numbers, you know. Apart of that, Russia, it's pretty much developing from smart TV point of view. It just started, but it's about 4 million households who already has a smart TV connected to internet and people watching video. It's partially because of size of the country. Sometimes from Vladivostok, you know, to Kaliningrad, you have to fly something about 8 hours, you know. And internet became probably the main source of information for everybody, you know. And it's pretty good quality of broadband connection. And it's developing pretty fast, and you know, that's exciting. And it's proceed to grow, you know. And it's disrupting classical distribution channels like classical TV, you know, free-to-air TV, cable channels, satellite providers, you know. It's disrupting all these channels and changing how people consuming products, and changing way and requirements to the product itself, you know, which is very important, you know, disruptive step.
I know this is an industry that's developing quickly, as you've already said. I mean, can we look into the future, sort of 5 years ahead? What's going to happen? What are going to be the key things for us to look out for? What does it look like?
You know, everything developing with such a high speed and pace that nobody actually knows what would be in 5 years. Nobody knows what would be in 3 years, you know. But still, I could imagine that it's would be completely different way people consuming all medias, not only video, you know. Currently, it's trend people consuming more and more on mobile phones. Even you're at home and you have computer, you have different devices. Sometimes you still proceed to consume stuff on your mobile phone because it's makes sense. You are moving around location. Another thing that different media is coming in one big chunk, and you are not recognizing as it's video or long read on short news or just animated picture. There is no difference any longer, and it became shorter and became more, actual. And what's as well actually important from video point of view, that people changing their expectations on the products as well. When, for example, Netflix starting to shoot their first TV series, they've put all episodes online at the same time, which not been a case for cable channels in the past, because they're putting it once a week, on Fridays, for example. Everybody asking why. As I said, because customers want, they've paid money, they want it at once, and probably watch all 8 episodes, 10 episodes of House of Cards in one shot. They like it, they want to pay for that. Why don't we do that? And it's changing products itself, it's changing the way people consuming these products. I do believe in 5 years we would see completely different industry. Why such things like Periscope coming to play, and it's well changing how people consuming and shooting user-generated videos from events, And we already mentioned Snapchat. Snapchat just started this discovery section when they've put information channels, which is completely new way how they proposing people to consume media. It's never done before, especially for mobile devices, and that's exciting world,
Absolutely, absolutely. Michael, you have identified a challenge or an issue that you see when it comes to companies and investors meeting, particularly if you look at the emerging markets. You look at the size of emerging markets, the global significance, the number of companies there, but they're severely underrepresented when it comes to the major global indices, and so you felt that technology could play a role here. Tell us, what is your vision? Is technology really going to be the thing that bridges that gap?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I think the the story, how close it started, was really some of the founders working in finance and big banks when it was still fashionable before the crisis to work there. And basically, we saw 2 trends happening at the same time. One was that investors are a little bit increasingly more global with their investment approaches. Certainly true with the U.S. mutual funds, certainly true with the pension funds in Europe, sovereign funds in the Middle East, hedge funds pretty much everywhere. And on the other side, we saw that new emerging markets are opening up for the first time to foreign investors. So Saudi Arabia this June, Iran only last weekend, China slowly as well. However, the gap between the two is very, very large. There's language, there's time difference, very different regulation. Access to the companies, access to information about the companies, the 2 things that we call investor relations, is basically very, very difficult. And that perhaps explains why emerging markets, or frontier markets as we call them, they account something like half of the global GDP, more than 85% of the global population, most of the growth. However, if you look at where the money is going, is basically a very, very small percentage goes into the emerging markets, basically. And then basically, so what we wanted to do was we wanted to address this gap, through technology, and we basically found it closer, and the name came around, bringing investors closer to one another, and IR being standing for investor relations. And we, spend a lot of time thinking about, what tools are we using in a day-to-day life that are so convenient and so easy, that can be implemented in our industry of understanding the company better, meeting the company quicker, which will hopefully kind of bring the gap. If you position yourself in the shoes of an institutional investor in Ohio, trying to learn about opportunities today in Nigeria or Iran or Mongolia, it's quite difficult. So what we're trying to do is basically spending a lot of time trying to see where technology can fit in to address those issues.
The other question I wanted to ask is that when one of the speakers yesterday on one of the panels, and it was notable how a significant number of the panels yesterday really touched on this question of digital disruption and digital innovation. And one of the speakers mentioned that in some ways, the biggest challenge with bringing out these new types of innovative companies and businesses is not so much in the existence of the technology, but it's actually in persuading people to think differently and to recognize that things could be done differently. Is that a challenge for you? Because fundamentally you're approaching companies and investors in a very different way, and you're trying to persuade them that something exists that they haven't previously seen.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think it's definitely a challenge when you address an industry that has been doing things exactly the same way for a very, very long period of time. So basically, coming with a completely brand new way of doing things, definitely takes some time for you to adapt, I think. And then obviously you have the technology adoption curve where even you have to start with addressing the needs of perhaps the most tech savvy to start off with, and then perhaps word of mouth basically spread. But I think from our experience, we had really good reception in emerging markets, which are increasingly tech savvy. There's a lot of those companies, a lot of those individuals are seeing that they can leapfrog some of the technologies. So I think the reception so far has been pretty positive from where we started. But I think it's definitely a challenge when you're going into an industry that has been so heavily deep rooted with doing things one certain way.
Yeah. I'd like to open the discussion up to the group here and pick up on one of the two core themes that I want to address, which also again ties into a number of the questions that people are discussing around Davos this year. And I think this is a question about equality of wealth distribution. And so, if depending on who you read, but if you listen to many economists, the question of the equality here is actually we're not making any improvements here, and in fact we're seeing an even bigger gap between the wealthy and the impoverished, whether from the emerging markets to the developed markets. Now, the question is, can technology play a role in addressing that and bridging that gap and making more equality, whether it's from an educational standpoint or a socioeconomic standpoint? Or on the contrary, do we have a risk that those with access to the better technology in the more developed markets are actually going to make that gap even wider? So Hannah, perhaps you can kick things off in our group discussion and give us a view. How do you see this?
I see it as both. It's both a challenge and an opportunity, right? I think we are seeing the big companies that have extreme capital eat up a lot of the smaller companies before they even have a shot at getting out there. So I think we're going to see even the startup scene change because of this. It's almost becoming like a monopoly out there of the huge companies doing kind of everything in technology these days. The social network is no longer just a social network, it's now everything. And this will affect the kind of the smaller players. And then you have the projects that are to give Wi-Fi to more people in the world, which will make the world smaller. You have entrepreneurs like me working on bringing a video identity to more people to be seen, right? Which can give opportunities to people that cannot fly everywhere, that can't afford maybe going to these technology conferences and go everywhere. So technology is giving opportunity as well as these tremendous challenges it brings as well.
Igor, do you have a view on it from Russia?
So actually, for me, it's technology. It's a type of a tool, like a hammer. And with a hammer, you could put a nail in a wall, and you could take this hammer and kill another person. And so at the end, it's your personal responsibility how to use this technology. But we already preliminarily discussed, and I do believe that there is things which technology could bring on the table, like for example, remote education. Or for people, I know that huge universities, US universities, European universities, they've put most of their courses online available for free for people who probably very remote and poor countries could access these courses and learn. The same I'm thinking about remote medicine, when people not living in a big cities and do not have access to really high-level professionals. This remote medicine could serve these people, in Alaska or in Siberia from Moscow, But at the end of the day, in most cases, when new technology came to a segment, in most cases, it eliminates unnecessary parts of when it exists on this segment. Doing these things more effectively, more properly, and finally, if it's good thing, end user consumer benefits from these things, as soon as benefits, usually services or products became cheaper and became wider, available for wider people, you know, as a result that it's doing in a new way, not the old style, and a lot of people doing 100 years the same way, and that's why it's actually you have to pay twice probably, comparing to a way how it could be done with the new technologies, you know. It's pretty good example, even segment in which Twiggle exists, you know, all TV channels and VOD delivery, which is actually available across worldwide, anytime, any video, any person, you know, instantly, you know, even on mobile phones, like via new applications, you know.
I want to remind all of our viewers online that we're conducting an online poll on this question, so do give us your view. Can technology help to either bridge the gap or, on the contrary, to make that gap broader? Michael, let me...
I think, I would think that it's probably quite important to differentiate about two different types of technology. One is the computer technology, the world of internet, which has been huge amount of progress over the last probably 10, 15 years. That is definitely kind of force for good, whether giving access to people to communication, to education, and so forth. But then you have, the other type of technology, which is, the world of real stuff, which is, arguably hasn't been so much progress. If you take a flight from New York to London, that really hasn't changed over the last 40 years. Probably it's even becoming more difficult. If you look at things like energy, agriculture, these are all things that really haven't moved that much forward. So if there are going to be innovations in the the world of stuff, the first driverless car probably will not be made in India. It'll probably be made in the US. The first robot that's going to be applying a doctor behind it probably will not be made in China. It will probably be made in Silicon Valley. So then the question kind of remains that the world of computers and the world of bits, very, very easily, you can pass that on, and you can see that force of being that force for good. However, the other element, the world of stuff, is definitely much, much more difficult, I think. So I think, the question then remains, how easily can the emerging markets or the poorer nations kind of adopt the technologies that are built in the West? And I think that will kind of be the challenge, whether it will be force for, equalizing or not.
Brian?
Yeah, yeah, I do agree with the view of seeing technology as either a way to improve things or to widen the gap. And I see the same company potentially doing two things at the same time. Think of Facebook before the donation of Mark Zuckerberg. So definitely one of the 62 richest people that own half of the world wealth would have been Mark. But on the other side, he also democratized a lot of access to other people and did a lot of projects to ensure that the wireless band was available to remote continents. So to me, there is definitely a polarization, but what really makes a difference is the fact that millennials, but in general, the human population is considering the gap as negative, and that in terms of media awareness has become more and more a clear issue. So what I do see now is a trend toward rebalancing. So yes, there is still the gap growing, but given the amount of attention that is being put on the problem, which shouldn't be underestimating the problem itself, because of course it's there and needs to be solved. But my personal feeling is that the amount of attention that has been put there and the culture that has been created in millennials will over time start kind of stopping the gap from widening and then start shrinking it. So for instance, if I look at Opportunity Network, in our case, on one side we are helping companies to become more profitable and grow worldwide. But on the other side, we've been endorsed by the Minister of Industry and Commerce of Morocco because we're providing transparency, not only to Morocco, but to Africa as a whole. And that will bring occasion for companies that really are trustworthy to shine, start sourcing also locally, and access capital markets and develop the economy as a whole. So again, technology is a tool.
Thank you very much. And again, I remind all of our viewers, if you have questions, do put your questions through, and I'll take a look shortly to see what's come through. But I'd like to introduce the second topic at this stage, which is disruption is a very hot word, and maybe it's a very trendy word in the sort of field of technology. But I wonder whether that is actually what companies or visionaries like you, is that what we should be striving for? Or on the contrary, should it be one more of symbiosis, where companies actually, or new ideas help to sort of plug into existing industries or existing ways that we do things? What is more important? Is it disruption, or is it symbiosis, or is it something between? Hannah, perhaps you can give us a view.
It's interesting. I think the need for people to think disruptive within existing companies will grow. I think the way we can affect education on that will change. Before it was a lot about the knowledge you had and what you knew. Now it's so much more about your ability to work in team, your ability to solve problems. And I think the growing need for this will affect, disruption on its own, where you don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur to do it, but you can do it in-house. And we now see bigger tech companies hiring entrepreneurs, right? So, which is kind of scary because they're stealing a lot of good people that are probably exhausted of being an entrepreneur, and all of a sudden you get offered to be this entrepreneur inside of a bigger company. And that I think we will see more and more of.
Your idea was pretty disruptive when you brought it out.
So actually, when I thought about that, I do believe, I think that, respect has nothing to do when we are talking about commercial business. If I imagine that Apple at the time when Steve introduced first iPhone been respectful to current players, probably we've been using the same mobile phones with the buttons and small screen till now, But he's disrupted this segment of the market. He's probably by this disruption killed most of the people who's actually been doing businesses before when he's approached it. This is a new product. And it's quite normal. That's evolution, it's evolution step, And usually when you are coming to the segment of the market with some revolutionary decision, especially on such segments which is conservative and been for a long time with the same scope, with the same business model, like for example financial segment of the market, Usually there is a big disruption for all big players, and most of these players probably gonna die if you are successful. But that's normal, because from this move, finally consumers, that's the people who benefits from these new products and actually new solutions. So I do not believe that symbiosis, at least on commercial plan, that's we have to take in mind,
Okay. Brian, you presumably have a strong view on this, given the business model that you've been developing.
Yes, we are on the other side. The way we look at that is the following. It's not about not having innovation. Innovation is core. You may have something that does not work. You can either throw it away and buy a new one, or build a new one, or you can fix it. So we are on the fix side. And basically, I can make an example outside of my industry. So I can think of an issue, which is the fact that it was hard to hail a cab in New York or in London. So the solution is create a way for people to call a cab in a more efficient way. So there have been two solutions. One is Uber, where they built their own infrastructure of cars and drivers, and they did it on their own, a little bit killing the existing infrastructure. There is another one called Way to Ride, which does exactly the same thing, but rather than have their own cars, they use the yellow cabs that are already existing. Not one is good and the other one is bad, simply it's a choice of how you want to grow your business. And to me, the way it works is the following. Each one has its own advantages. It's quicker to build from scratch than to wait somebody to ally with you, especially if it is a bigger company. And so it will always take more time for the partnership to get started and really yield kind of the type of results that you would expect and that you could be able to get on your own. So it's quicker to go for the disruption. But on the other side, when you can get the giant behemoth to work with you, then you have a lot of guns on your side. And so on one side, you'll be able to scale much faster. So your curve, rather than linear, will be way more exponential. And on the other side, in the beginning, the big giants would never fight back because you're too small to matter. But when you start growing enough, then what is the incumbent will fight back. And regardless of you winning or the incumbent winning, it's a loss of resources on both sides. A lot of fees for lawyers, that's good for that industry. But regardless of that being a fight in advertising or a fight in legal or a fight in whatever, it is something that is not accruing value for the final customer on its own. So the way we look at that is, if you want to go fast, go disruption. If you want to go far, go symbiosis.
Okay.
Michael, you presumably have investment banks looking at what you're trying to do, and I would be surprised if you haven't had a few expressions of concern that you're trying to displace a model that works and doesn't need a replacement. Are you disrupting?
I think I would agree with Brian. I think there's also kind of a space which is kind of trying to fill the void. So basically, maybe one of the things as an entrepreneur, when you look at the market, you're trying to see where the opportunity is and where the void is, and what is the area that no one is looking. And then maybe ask yourself the question, why is no one looking at this area? Why is it a void? Is it too expensive? Is it too unprofitable? Is it too difficult to get in? What are the barriers? And then, you try to challenge yourself into thinking, what can I do more efficiently? And then, maybe technology can do it more efficiently. And then I think, where you kind of, where your place is over there is, you're addressing a segment of the market that kind of people don't want to address, and then you do have a certain amount of allies, that are willing to be working with you, listening to your story, even supporting you. To put this into a live example, if you look at an average, a listed company in an emerging market, maybe you will have 150, 200 institutional investors. But there are 4,000 emerging market funds all over the world, especially a lot of small ones, family offices, that companies have no access to and they have no connectivity to. So the question is, why has the current setup, failed to address this need? And then you're going to have a lot of answers to that, and then you have to put the spotlight on yourself. Can you do it? Can you do it cheaper? Can you do it more quicker? But I mean, I don't think we really see ourselves as we're going kind of head on, small startup against the Wall Street. I think it's maybe not the another position I think we want to be in. I think we want to be working with the counterparties to make things a lot more efficient and do it faster, do it cheaper, and then yes, collaboration I think is definitely the name of the game, and a lot of people that are in our shoes are also looking for partners rather than kind of trying to go against it, because I think that's an easy way to fail quickly.
Thank you. As I promised, we would take questions from our audience online, and so I'm having a look at them now. We have a number of them, and so we'll try and get through what we can. The first question actually comes from Mark Tuski from San Francisco, that asks the question, what is the secret to actually attracting talented people into these startups when, quite frankly, often in the early stages, you're not in a position to give money, you're not in a position to give the big salaries. At the same time, you're going for people that could command that in other organizations. How do you motivate them? How do you get them on side?
It's super hard, because there are very few people in this world that are willing to work without having a good salary, right? And there's really no good way at solving it, except, if you're lucky. The benefit that Silicon Valley and San Francisco has is you have a lot of talented people that's already made quite a bit of money that can maybe go a year developing a product without having the income. So if you can find those and convince them of the product, and then obviously give a lot of equity, I think the carrot, at least in Silicon Valley, where a lot of the consumer tech companies are, is to give a lot of equity. And a lot of those, the most talented people, they won't even join if you don't give a lot of equity. And then for the really early beginners, you have to start with maybe finding developers abroad in other regions that are maybe a little more low cost, and build a beta and show that little beta, and you take it step by step. Yeah.
But it's just, so giving a lot of equity is obviously an attractive way to do it, but on the other hand, you have the issue of it's hard to know what that equity is worth, and also there's only so many times you can split the 100%, right? And you don't quite know how long you're going to have to continue dividing up that 100% as you go. What's been your experience?
So our case is a very interesting case, at least to us. We are now 40 people full-time, and we have a very clear rule when we hire. Everybody that comes in the company is coming at a haircut from their previous job. And it's not because we don't have the money to pay them. We have very good profitable margins, and we are profitable today as a company. But that's a rule we set up in the beginning. And that is true for me as well. Even if we were $1 billion company, we would not pick up people that are not willing to take a haircut to join. And the reason is we don't want to have people that are there to get a salary, nor to get rich quickly or to kind of do the next thing, just because that means that as soon as somebody else is going to need the type of talent, they can offer a dime more and they'll be gone. We believe in long-term relationship. We believe in purpose, and we believe in giving trust to people. So what we have done is we started with a very small team, and even myself, I cut my salary very, very low. Today we're profitable. The company is worth 150 million. My own salary is below the level of survival. And that is not because the company can't, simply because one of the things we do is we ensure that either we all make it or we all break it, and that is true for me as well. So my salary personally is one of the lowest in the entire company, and I'm proud of it. And what you give to people instead of kind of the quick salary or the quick win, beside the perspective of bigger earnings and gains, and everybody in the company is a shareholder for small or for big amount, the main thing is purpose. Because what we're doing is we are creating a company that is solving economic issues. We're working with people that come from the banking industry that saw the shortcomings and they see how we're fixing it, and they're excited about building something that is fixing those issues. We're working with very talented tech people, and what we're doing is challenging, and they love the fact that they can solve this type of issues. And the other side I was saying is trust. Trust is one of the core values of our company, and the point is the following. As the CEO I'm one of the least decision maker in the company. But because what I do is I choose my management team and I give them trust, I give them budget. They can make their own decision. My only decision is, do I still trust them? And so all the decision-making power in the company is toward the bottom. So you take people that are extremely talented, you give them power, you give them budget, you give them authority. They're a little bit entrepreneurs on their own. And that's what people are looking for. That's what I was looking for. That's what they are looking for. And in fact, when you look at our company, it's very weird in terms of the overall seniority. We're kind of unique because I'm one of the youngest guy at 28. My management team average is 30. And then you have second and third line report that are 35, 40, and 45. So all the seniority and all the people that have done 20 years in Wall Street and so on are second, third line reports, just because they have more ability to impact from there. And it's not an issue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think Tom, there's an intangible element to hiring within the startup, which you cannot see on a contract or an equity plan or a salary, and that's just kind of the the buy-in into a mission, into a vision, and if everything goes down, that team will still be up and they'll still be working because they see that there's something bigger that they're part of, and I think it's often hard to find those kind of people that are willing to sacrifice so much unless they really, really believe in what they're trying to do. And that's why I think we're 10 people, and we were 10 for quite some time now. And I think we're very, very cautious with external hires because we really want to make sure that they they're part of this this almost cult, which is we're here to change something and we're in it together, and everyone does everything. And then after that comes the discussion of kind of compensation, but it always has to be secondary.
Yeah. And just to build on that, I do agree. And when we hire people, we first have them having conversation with our chief people officer. They test culture. They could be the most skilled people on earth. They could be adding tremendous value. They could be exactly what we need from a skill perspective. But the business side is not even going to see them if they don't pass our culture test, because that is what we are, and that's what we're going to build.
Igor, I'm going to ask you a different question with your permission, because there's a question directly addressed to you from Jackie in Hong Kong. Jackie, thank you for still being awake. You basically were one of the first people to make the online video industry happen. So you clearly have a nose for what's new and where things are going. So let's take advantage of that. What's next? What's the next big industry to break? What's the next big digitalization that we're going to see?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, and one of the projects I'm working on, it's in a scope of, as a member of EM Communications Advisory Board, we are looking, on a segment in which company working, it's actually communication between shareholders and big companies and potential shareholders. And we found that the way how it's currently people doing, it's probably quite a similar way it's how it's been 100 years ago. Digital around, but it used not quite widely like in other different segments. And one of the ideas we have in mind, how to revolutionize this, how to do it in a way that people most of the time spending on social networks, but on direct connections, on chats, on I don't know, on a video presentations, but at the same time still visiting locations, take a look on a precise, thing before they are gonna make a decision. And from other side, probably sometimes they don't know about this potential because they are remote from different countries. That's a big challenge from one side because it's very conservative segment of the market. From other side, that's a big potential. I do believe this segment would change dramatically in the next few years. That's my belief.
I can add to
Yeah.
the question too. Virtual reality. Yeah, I think it will change more than we kind of are able to picture, right? Because it's technology that ER and VR, we haven't had this before, so it's hard for us to imagine what can we do with virtual reality technology. So I think that's going to be exciting. And I think when Mark Zuckerberg now announces he's focused on the home, which when we look at it are like everyone so many of us have a home, right? But it hasn't really changed a lot of the technology we have at home. So I think that is going to be an exciting space to watch.
I'm going to open up a new question here, actually, because we're running out of time, from Vera in London. So you see, you're not the only woman in digital technology, at least. Puts the question, look, becoming a technology company has become very fashionable, and you have more and more companies that you wouldn't necessarily think of being as technology companies, but that are starting to position themselves as such because they've worked out the valuations can be higher if you plug into that theme. Do you see that, and where does the market draw the line? Where do you stop becoming a technology company or start becoming a technology company in the market's eyes? Is this creating a bubble, or is the market smart enough to know what's what?
So first of all, many of the traditional players as well have started defining themselves as technology companies. So if you look at the self-definition of American Express, is not a credit card company anymore. They define themselves as a technology company operating in the payment space, which is the way you would see Square defining himself. So you see that shift toward that technology type of narrative that on one side, yes, is yielding higher multiples, but on the other side is also recognizing the fact that it's not what you do, is how you do it. And so your capabilities with big data and with the ability to serve customers in different ways than kind of one pony trick really brings you that direction in terms of kind of reaching success and be relevant for your customer base. On the flip side, I do hear a lot about startup valuation and about bubbles. My personal view is yes, we're in a bubble, and it's 2000 again, and it's coming. So my point is we've seen in 2000 companies being valued on something that was called new economy, which basically is completely unrelated from any of the fundamentals of the business, and this is happening again now. So from that perspective, given the fact that many investors are optimistic about the growth, that growth can't happen for all these companies that are competing one against the other on a single segment. So many of them will be losing money by definition, because they're all taking into account the same growth on parallel companies that are doing the same. Yeah. So in that perspective, the approach we have taken is all our valuation have been only built on multiple of EBITDA. So as if we were a shoe manufacturer or anything else, just because we want to be in a place where this bubble kind of gets burst, where we don't get kind of...
Be on the right side of the bubble.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add probably is that, the difference between the bubble of the 90s and the bubble now is that there's a lot less people involved in this current bubble. So you have the venture capital space, the private companies are staying private for as long as they possibly can. So I think, with regards to the real estate bubble, the banking crisis, I think there was a lot of people greatly affected by the burst. I think in this case, I would probably differ a little bit in terms of there's a lot less people. It's pretty much just the venture capital space as basically affected. I think, in terms of the question of the explosion of technology, I think computer technology, like I mentioned, is unregulated space, and the cost has been going down. So it's basically very, very quickly, easily to create an app. You can possibly do it, few people in the garage very quickly. If you want to build, something which is not computer related, you're facing a regulator that's looking at you. And that becomes a lot more difficult to be creating real solutions to everyday problems. That's why planes are the way they are. That's why the experience of going to a hospital, it's the same like it was 20 years ago. That's why the home maybe hasn't changed that much. But also because the technology on the phones and the computers have been moving very, very quickly. It's been falling and it's not regulated.
We're coming up against the clock. I'm looking at the results of the poll that we are doing. Will technology either bridge the gap in terms of income inequality, or will it expand the gap? We have 57% saying that it will help, it will bridge the gap. A small number, around 10%, saying that it will actually expand the gap. But the remaining say it's actually too early to say. Those were the choices that we gave. And so I suppose there's still a lot to be determined as these businesses evolve as to what role they play and how healthy and a useful role they can play in the societies in which they operate. We're up at 6:15, Davos time. So with that, I would just like to, first of all, thank all of our viewers that joined us on the panel here today. And most of all, to our speakers, to Yegor, to Helen, to Brian, to Michael. Thank you for being with us today. And
Thank you.
certainly
Our pleasure.
see you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.